I initially wasn't going to stream, but this story was kind of just been annoying me throughout the day, and I decided to read it, go into why it's a problem, and then, play off of a continuing narrative I've mentioned and stated several times in the past. Senator Susan Collins of Maine says she is not swayed by crowdfunding aimed at encouraging her to oppose Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, comparing the effort to a bribe. I consider this quid pro quo fundraising to be the equivalent of an attempt to bribe me to vote against Judge Kavanaugh, Collins told conservative news outlet Newsmax. Two groups of Maine progressives have pledged to donate up to $1.3 million to Collins' next opponent. If the Maine senator votes to confirm Kavanaugh, Newsmax reported, Collins is not up for re-election until 2020. Donors have been asked to pledge money against Collins, but their credit cards will only be charged if she votes yes on Kavanaugh. If I vote against him, the money is refunded to the donors, Collins said. If I vote for him, the money is given to my opponent for the 2020 race. This effort will not influence my vote at all. I think it demonstrates the new lows to which Judge's opponents have stooped. Maine People's Alliance and Mainers for Accountable Leadership have teamed up to crowdsource the effort. They have received 987 $987,922 from 3,000 these numbers pledges as of Tuesday morning with a goal of 1.3 million. They actually did reach a million today, or at least since this article's been put out. The people of Maine are asking to be a hero, Senator Collins. The crowdfunding page states, your swing vote could decide whether a rubber stamp for Trump's anti-healthcare, anti-women, anti-labor agenda gets confirmed to the Supreme Court, costing millions of Americans their health care, their right to choose, and their lives. The statement warns Collins that the group intends to get you out of office following a yes vote. Though Collins has stated multiple times that efforts by liberal activists will not sway her vote, she has faced a barrage of protests in recent weeks. Activists have reportedly sent Collins more than 3,000 coat hangers evoking back alley abortions in their attempt to persuade her to vote against Kavanaugh's confirmation. Let me say a little to Dirk. So, now that we've gotten the reading out of the way, I mentioned before we live in the Twilight Zone, but I'm gonna get into why that's the case. So she says to go back up here, that the effort won't influence her vote at all. And with a gesture, we are going to get on that. But my point to you is that she says this money against her will not influence her vote at all, and it's a new low, to stoop to confirming judges this way, or to use this money against people who want to vote for the judge. But when you live in a democracy where it costs millions of dollars to run for pretty much any seat, what exactly are those people supposed to do? See, what I hate about stories like this is that they're meant to shame individuals who are trying to affect positive change within the U.S. without resorting to violence or some manner of evil. So when they're not used to having what they're doing tracked or stalked, which they should, people should do more stuff like this. They get upset about it. They go, "What do you mean you're going to fund my opponent if I vote against everyone's interest?" Because 71% of Americans are in favor of Roe versus Wade. So she's doing something very, very unpopular, which is why that thing is getting traction. Let me say hello to Envoy. And so when I speak, a lot of times it's generalizations, but there's actually a website, because when I talk, I like to kind of know what I'm talking about, and it's been one of the reasons I've been more upset with things that actually matter getting less views, because I take the time to prep what I'm going to say, to make sure I know what I'm talking about, and just have some kind of fact to give back to whoever's watching. But whatever, that's a minor argument. There's a website called opensecrets.org, and it lists the donors for, I'd say, at least most of these politicians. And Collins' top contributor in the last, just since she's been in the Senate, was General Dynamics, which is a corporation. Her next one, they gave her over $100,000, and this was individuals, and then the PACs gave her $38,000. You get the point. The MBNA Corp gave her $100,000. They're a corporation as well. Elliott Management, another corporation, gave her 90,000. You get the picture. It's corporation after corporation after corporation, year after year. This is from 1995 to this year. So this has been from the year before she entered, 2 years before she entered the Senate to now. Just all these donors giving her tens of thousands of dollars. And we're lucky it's only that, that amount and not, millions. But that's largely due to the fact that she lives in a state where you don't need a million votes to win her election. Let me read what Wicked Gesture is writing. According to some, I'll read what you wrote after this, Dirk. According to some conservatives, it doesn't matter what the people want that matters. It's what's best for the economy. This is an argument individuals made on Twitter. Oh yeah, man. If I can find a way to mount this camera, I'll show you the nonsense I've heard from people responding to my campaign to raise awareness of that 100 billion military spending increase to 717 billion bill, which incidentally she voted for. Thanks to her defense contractors pumping money in her back, but whatever. So Dirk says it takes the best to make the most with small dollar donations. Yeah, that's why Cruz is having the trouble he's having in Texas right now. O'Rourke is getting people to come out, but I want you to ponder something with me, and I want this question answered. If you live in if you live in a country where it takes several millions on average to run for pretty much any race in the U.S., or at least 100,000, and a majority of people can't afford $1,000 emergency, what other ways do they have to go against what you're doing that are of a peaceful nature than protest? Those people send those coat hangers, the ones that are giving money to this unknown candidate. What else are they supposed to do? So effectively, we're seeing. So you have to understand, these stories, as I mentioned with that military bill, they don't get the coverage that they should. Yeah, Envoy, you said it correctly. They don't have an alternative, really. It's sad. That's my point. So you have to understand that there's psychology in play here, the human factor. Most people can't afford to challenge these elected officials, and they can really only afford to live with that person as their constituent. So when they go around, they try to speak about something and feel they're being ignored, and they get a whole bunch of people to rally around an effort. Now they're the villains. So it's her being ridiculous. Envoy continues, the way money gets trickled throughout the U.S. Yeah, and what's even creepier is the fact that you have all these people that live in Maine who will still vote for her. She got 400,000 votes in her last election, which is not that much compared to. I'll put it to you this way. I think if you had someone, so like for example, you have the Cynthia Nixon thing going on in New York, and that's millions of votes. But I can put it to you this way: if a person announced their campaign against her starting this year, and people start donating to that person, like right after she votes for Kavanaugh up until 2 years from now when the actual election takes place, they would win. They'd have increased their name recognition. They have 600 days to get all this. They would just blow her away. And I hope somebody does that. I would do it if I lived in Maine, and if I were old enough. But anyways, so let's go back to the this Twilight Zone narrative, because I mentioned this a few videos back, and it's the idea that everything is backwards. Envoy says lots of course will still vote for Susan Collins. You're probably too smart for the average American, which is why they turn a blind eye to these things. But we have to also, you know this, that the media has certain stories and topics they won't discuss. You think that tonight on MSNBC or Fox or CNN, they're going to be talking about Collins and her money she's getting from, what were they, General Dynamics and Elliott Management and all that? And how that influenced her votes in the past, and that's why she voted for the tax cuts back in December. They're going to the top 1%, in addition to the 100 billion military spending increase, just so we can fund the 7 wars that we're already in and probably start more. None of those sources are going to talk about that, and that on YouTube we have so much content and so few people who just actively seek out things political that you have to use these tricks and schemes to get them to pay attention to this stuff. Envoy says absolutely. News outlets have agendas too. Truth is not always seeked or even promoted. People want you to feel a certain way rather than understand the truth. Yeah, but again, let's cap this off. That would cause a storm to their CNN donations, definitely. So let's cap this off by going back to the Twilight Zone thing. Let me read Wicked Gesture's comment. If it doesn't matter what the people want, then I suggest they stop screaming about the First and Second Amendment because their logic, your basic human rights don't matter. Yeah, I mean, let's not forget it's been almost 17 years since they effectively repealed the Fourth Amendment with the Patriot Act, but you don't see anyone talking about that on the corporate media. So, like I said, we live in the Twilight Zone, and we just had a senator who admitted, I don't care about this crowdfunding. I don't care that so many people are sick and tired of having these representatives that vote against their interests. As I mentioned to you, over 70% of Americans support Roe versus Wade, which we have reason to believe Kavanaugh will try to get rid of. And she is telling us that money will not change her vote, while it being public knowledge that she's had corporations donate to her and that she's voted for corporate tax cuts. This is also the same senator who stated that she was part of a moderate wing of Republicans, and yet somehow she finds herself voting for the most conservative right-wing judges of both Gorsuch and likely Kavanaugh. But while she's doing this, she wants you and I to believe, while it's public knowledge that she voted for Gorsuch, that she's more moderate than her contemporary Republicans. This is also the same Republican who told us, oh, what else does she do? Okay, so so the same person who we know is taking bribes from corporations is lecturing us about the need not to bribe politicians with the threat of money being used against them. Yeah, sheesh. And the same person who won re-election 4 years ago because actual middle class people voted for her is the same individual who thinks that that group of people should have a 100 billion military spending increase to be taxed to them. I'm not even gonna play that again. I get to keep and own my artillery of guns, but you don't get the right to be able to make a living wage. Conservatives are very self-serving. Yeah. Um, just all of this together, does it make sense to you? Like, these are the kind of stories that leave me almost wanting to bang my head up against the wall because they seem so obvious in what their conclusion should be, and then it's a complete antithesis. If you go on her Twitter, if you go on any page of any association having to do with her, and you say, hey, she's doing this, she's doing that, she's doing this, you will still find people who will support her and will say, oh, well, she's not as bad as the other ones. And I'll say, how? The only thing she ever did that was of worth anything, from what I've seen of her votes, and I've tried to go and read back through these, was voting with the Democrats to keep net neutrality. That's it. Still got Gorsuch, corporate tax cuts, the 100 billion military spending increase. So in what ways has she benefited the people of her state? But again, she'll win re-election if again the challenger is not different from her, and being someone who's not a corporate stooge. And so of all these people who will vote for her, who will not have it at the center of their mind, oh yeah, this is the same senator who put a guy that's going to repeal a decision that is supported by 7/10 of the people. And you also have to factor in supporters because there's always someone who likes somebody, unfortunately. So what music goes through my head when I go on Twitter and I see people saying, "Oh, Collins, she's one of the decent ones left. She's gonna represent us more than the regular Republicans." They say this while I'm aware of the ways that she's voted with the rest of her party. It just keeps going through my head. Just as I read that story, as I look at her response, as I sit here trying to report this now, it doesn't make sense to me. You know what that song is, Envoy? What is the stream I keep referring back to? You really don't know what that song was. I alluded to its title earlier. I didn't outright say it, but I figured it's icon. I mean, it's got 2 million views on YouTube, so it's iconic enough to be recognizable. Yeah, I'm telling you, that's what we live in. Look at the like, if you look at the political landscape. Yeah, obviously, we've talked about the few representatives that actually have principles and do things for their constituents. But if you look at the general political landscape, you look at the romantic landscape, just relationships in general, um, pretty much anything that's discussed here, a majority of the people involved either do something dumb or they're just out of their mind. I mean, Envoy, what was I supposed to say about 9/11? I don't remember the event. Giuliani used it to further his political career, so I guess that's good for him. What more can I say? Led to two of the worst policies in American history: the Afghanistan war, the longest war in American history, and the effective repealing of the Fourth Amendment. That's about all I can add to it. No, but I want to figure out. Would it be interesting to have? Let me see what Wicked Gesture is saying. I don't know why he's laughing, but whatever. Would it be interesting to have a group of people who were just committed to getting a certain senator out of office, and then report on that person in particular? Because what I was thinking of speaking about earlier was that speech that the National Security Advisor gave. Doing a Kabuki Theater with that. But this is a Kabuki article, the one I read, and just her quotes and what she had to say about people trying to sway her vote. I'm literally watching a corrupt individual tell me I will not be corrupted by the will of the people, and it doesn't get videos on this subject unless you put it in some tricky title. Don't get any views. This probably won't even crack 50, or if it does, it won't crack 100. It's always in that same little category. And again, when I show you the research, when I try to entertain you with how just backwards all this stuff is, no one cares. And branching to a bunch of more wars indefinitely, yeah. I mean, if you look at her record, it's so bad that I just don't get why anyone thought it made sense to think she would vote differently than how she did on Gorsuch. And it's really aggravating when you consider the fact that if every Democrat voted against Kavanaugh with two Republicans, I've mentioned this before, you could block him. But the problem is that we've had Democrats vote for, Gorsuch in the past, so I have no reason to believe they won't try to cross over and go, hey, look at me, I'm moderate, as part of a long-winded effort to keep their seat. So what's going on in Washington is a circus. Collins has been at the center of it for about 2 decades now. I wish I could get more information on just all of her votes, because I would love to just go through Maine during the summer of 2 years from now and just campaign against her. I mean, it's terrible. And like I said, when I go on these websites and I see that these politicians who don't serve their constituents' interest still have supporters, and I can name 7 or 8 different things they did that were awful and that should warrant nobody supporting them other than other than that small thin group that supported that policy, I just keep hearing this. That's the music that just goes through my head all day when I'm thinking about this stuff. So, this is more Twilight Zone behavior, and we could have really saw a senator who's a Republican actually stand up and say, I'm a moderate. I don't want Roe versus Wade overturned. I don't want to have to go back to using coat hangers to pop out embryos or whatever. But more dumb stuff. So into the toilet we go. Yeah, I'm gonna keep Envoy. It plays over and over in my head as I read the what these politicians say, what their supporters say. I had a guy who actually on Twitter said, I don't believe, like someone else said this, 71% of people support Roe versus Wade. And someone's like, I don't believe what you're saying. And I just sent him the source. He said nothing back. Like, people literally will now deny statistics and numbers. Even all the way up until you almost have to just throw the source right in front of their face. Dirk says money takes a long time to not be the focus of people's eyes, especially in politics. I could see that, but it still sucks. And the only way we're ever going to because people, they have this thing about, just have somebody run in 2 years that wins the presidential election, but you still have a Congress where it's like, 10 people aren't beholden to donors? That's awful. So we need more focus on these individual races, and that's about it. I think I had my problems with the Justice Democrats, but I wouldn't mind the candidates doing something about this person. And it's the fact that she's had 4 terms, and this is the best she can do for her constituents. Like, guys, here's when you read these stories, you go, they're so weird. How is this even happening? You have to remember the people that are doing that have been able to get away year after year after year with very little protest. Could you imagine if Collins went to her office one day in Maine and had maybe so she had over 400,000 votes her last election cycle. 200,000 people just swarm around the building, like just all loads and loads of people just all consuming the building. She would not be able to get away with this, and she would know not to betray her constituents again. But because they know most people don't pay attention to this stuff other than when they hear something about an election on TV, it's whatever. So I want to thank everyone who's participated. Again, I wasn't planning on doing a stream, but it just pissed me off so much. Hopefully we can get something else out during the week. So Twilight Zone. Nonsense, just with how people view and see things and let stuff go by. And if they had higher attention spans, we'd be able to change a lot of things, but I don't see it happening. So into the toilet we go.